and I'm going to bring it up to here, and I'm going to open it up just a hair. No, I don't want to do that. Damn Russians. All right, so this question, first of all, I want to show you the right mathematical answer, because I showed y'all the right answer, and you have to type one of them in wrong to get the points right. I told you that this was a screwed up question, so I was expecting a question on this. So y sub 1 is equal to x squared minus 4. Well, since the 4 is not attached to the x, this is a vertical shift. And we know that a is equal to 1, so that means it's a regular parabola. And that's pretty much it. So if we was to draw this one, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and it'd be a regular parabola looking like that. Now that's not where the problem is, okay? The second and the third one is where the problem is. So we'll do that here in just a minute. So that's the right answer right here. The second one is parentheses 1/4 x quantity squared. Now that is not complete. You have to change it to 1/16 x squared. And this is complete. So we've got a 1/16. So that is between 0 and 1. A is between 0 and 1. Therefore, you have a very wide parabola. And we went over that, you know, with the vertical, horizontal orientation and all that. X squared is a regular parabola, but it's going to be wide. There's no vertical shift. There's no horizontal shift. So basically, you're going to have something like this. Okay. Now, I think they put 1/8. I'm at 1/4. I can't remember. The answer, one of the answers to this problem is not correct. And I have sent it at least 5 or 6 times, and they haven't changed it. And they haven't replied back to me. So I'm just going to tell you what to do to get the points for the homework. But I'm going to tell you the right answer. This is the correct answer, 1/16 x squared. The next one, 3x quantity squared minus 4. The correct mathematical answer is 9x squared minus 4. Here, the x does not have anything attached to it, so this is a vertical shift. 4 down. And this says it's going to be very skinny. Okay? So if I was to draw this one, I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, and I would draw something very skinny. Now, these are the 3 mathematical answers. These are what should be the answers. And that's all I'm going to say. Now, as you draw these, one of them is going to be wrong because they've programmed the wrong answer in. I believe it's this one. I believe it's 1/4. Y'all jump right in if y'all know, but I think it's the middle one. All right, so here we go. Let's do the first one.
It's the middle one.
I thought it was. And the first one is going to be -4. And I've got a vertical shift of -4. And hit enter, and that's that one. And you hit save. And then you go in and click it again. And you hit another parabola. Now, the answer is 1/16. Okay, let me show you again. This is the answer. That's the real mathematical answer. But I think they use 1/4. Somebody help me out. Do they use 1/4? I think
yes. They do.
They do. So that means that we're going to have to make it compressed along the x-axis, along the y-axis, and stretched on the x-axis. And we spent a whole day class on that. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit parabola, and it's got a -4 on the vertical shift. And horizontal stretch, you can put it here. Let's see, it's going to be a horizontal stretch of 1/4. And that should give you that. Now, that orange one is not mathematically correct, but that's what they want. So we're going to just, because I've done all I can do. I can't change the problem, so I just tell you how to get the answer right. And I try not to put this one on the test. And then this one, let's go ahead and hit save. And then this one I think is correct. You just put that in there, and then you do a vertical shift of -4 down. And this one is going to be compressed. So it means it's going to be a vertical of 9. And that should be your answer. And I'm going to hit check answer. And if I've done the second one incorrectly, which I've done, okay, then it should be all correct. So this is not a very good question because the second one, that second one right there, that's incorrect. It's supposed to be very much wider because that's supposed to be 1/16. Okay, so don't feel bad about that question if you've had it in your homework. I've made sure I covered it in the videos, or I covered it in class, so that way it wouldn't broadside you, okay? And that's that question. It is not a test question. It's a good test question if it was correct, but it's not correct. That middle one is not correct because you can't, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're going to make this 9x squared, then you need to make this 1/16 x squared. But if you made this 1/16, it would mark it wrong. But it's okay to make this 9x squared. You see what I'm saying? You got to do for both. So that question is not a good question. I'll go ahead and send it again. But I doubt I'll get anything back. Y sub 2 needs to graph as 1/16. And I've sent all kinds of, Y sub 2 needs to graph as 1/16. And I doubt I'll get anything back. I've sent it many times. All right, so that's that question. Next question, let's delete that one. Next question, 2.3 to 23/5. The graph has transformed g of x to the right, no shrinking, blah, blah, give the equation y equals g of x. Okay, let's see. The graph of y equals f of x is x squared, has been transformed. Oh, they want you to write, okay, just do the horizontal and vertical shift. So let's see how many to see. So that's a horizontal shift of what, 5 to the right? So I'm going to take my handy dandy document cam and move it over. Give me a second. And we've got a horizontal shift of 5 to the right. So that's going to be a -5. And remember, the horizontal shift has got to be connected to the x. We know it's a parabola, so it's a square, and then a vertical shift of 6 down. So the red, let me do it in red. The red function should be g of x is equal to x minus 5 quantity squared minus 6. And remember, as I told you that day in class, the horizontal shift is always the opposite. So if you got one going to the right, that means it's going to be a negative 5. So let's type it in and see if we're right. X minus 5 quantity squared minus 6. And we feel good about ourselves. Ooh, I got it wrong. Let's see what their answer is. Oh, I forgot. It's going the opposite direction. I'm sorry. That's my mistake. I didn't even notice that. Duh. There. That's my fault. I didn't even notice that. That was my fault. Yeah, it's supposed to be negative. But the horizontal shift and the vertical shift is right there and right there. And it is going. And if you remember, do you remember the day that we went over the different colored graphs, use different pens and different colors? Do you remember that day? Somebody say yes or no. Nobody remembers that. Well, I can take you to the video that we did it. Do y'all not remember that? Nobody? Miss Davis, you don't remember that? Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. I know you're lagging on mine.
Oh Lord, there's something wrong with the video here.
I was looking at my notes, but yes, we did do that.
Yeah, that was the day that I told y'all to draw a big graph. I'll do an example right here. Y'all remember this? Hold on. Y'all remember me telling y'all to draw a big graph like this? And we drew x squared in the middle. And then I did a blue graph or different color graph, and it was wider. And then we do a different graph, and I think it was red. I can't remember if it was red or not, and it was skinnier. And then we turned it over, and I think it was green, or it might have been vice versa. Y'all remember doing this? And we did a horizontal shift and vertical shift. I know we did it because I've seen it on the video on YouTube. You know, the still shot of the video, it has that on it. So I know we did it. And I told you that the horizontal shift was always the opposite. So if I gave you x minus 3 quantity squared, that would be 1, 2, 3 to the right. And it would be a parabola that looks like the black one. Do y'all remember going over that?
Yeah.
Okay. I got one person out of 18 that said, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the interaction. I'll just get y'all. Y'all remember going over that? Raise your hands. How about that? See if we get some hands raised. Okay, got a few. Okay, so I want to make sure. Remember, I have the 109 class. You can put your hands down now. I have the 109 class, and sometimes I forget what I go over. So you have to make sure you tell me if we go over stuff or not. Okay, so that's that question. And remember the negative. I forgot that. I'm sorry. Okay, I like this. This is a good test question. Okay, because it pretty much goes over what we went over that day. Next. Okay, this is 2.51/1. And this is a piecewise function. As I told you, I don't do a lot of piecewise functions on the test. They're not my favorite because you don't see them a lot. So the graph F gives the speed along a rural highway after traveling X miles. Complete parts A through D. what is the speed limit at the 16-mile mark? Well, here's the 16-mile mark right here. And it is, what is that? Let's see, that's 55. So it should be 55 miles per hour. Okay. Estimate the miles of highway with a speed limit of 35. Well, 35 is right here. So here is, let's see, that's 4, that's the 4 miles. Let's see. Halfway between 4 and 8 is 6. So that's 2 miles. And then here is 4 miles. 4 and 2 is 6 miles. And f of 5, so that means I got to plug in 5 as x. F of 5 is going to give me 35. So f of 5 is going to give me 35. Okay, let me check that again. No, I'm sorry. This is 6. I read 6. I'm sorry. 5 is right about here. So f of 5 would give me 40. My bad. And f of 10. F of 10 would be right here. And that would be 60. No, 55, sorry. And f of 15, let's say 12, 13, 14. 14 would be in the middle, so 15 would be right here. 15 would be 35. At what x values, that's down here, is the graph continuous? Well, continuous means that the solid cancels out this, so that's continuous, 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 continuous. I would say from 0 up to 20 is continuous, because the filled in circle cancels out this open circle. This one cancels that one out. This one cancels this one out. This one cancels this one out, and this one cancels this one out. But the problem is 20 is not inclusive. So I would say up to 20. But it says it's discontinuous. I would say at 20. But I might be reading it wrong. Let me see what they say. Oh, they're asking for the individual where it's discontinuous. I'm sorry. So at 4, 6, 8, 12, and 16, where you see, I thought they were asking is one general function. Okay, that's my fault. So it's discontinuous here. It's discontinuous here. It's discontinuous here. And it's discontinuous here. And technically it's discontinuous at 20, but that's the end of the function. That's not, I don't like question D, because that's a little bit misleading. What happens at each discontinuity? You switch to another mile per hour. If you look, what happens here? Boop, switch to here. What happens here? Boop, switch to here. What happens here? Boop, switch to there. What happens here? Boop, switch to here. What happens here? Boop, switch to there. So somewhere it says it changes, okay? The speed limit changes at all discontinuities. Now that is a good question. I just don't like D. So if you were confused on D, I can understand that, because I thought the question was asking as a whole function, is it discontinuous? And when I saw that x equals, I started saying, I don't know why it says x equals, because if it was the whole function, it would be f of x. But anyway, I read the question different. So you will pick whichever you see. And the reason they didn't include 20 is because that's the end of the function. That's why. That's why they didn't use 20. I don't like question D. The other questions I do like for test questions. I like this one for a test question, B for a test question, and even this one as a test question. I just don't like D. Okay, so that's the questions for the homework. I think that should be it. And they sent me a case number. That's nice, but I doubt I'll see anything out of it, but it's worth a shot. Now, let me go back to completing the square. All right, now I'm going to show you one today, and we're at about level 5 on difficulty, where the answer is not going to come out the same as it's been being. So let's do one. Here we go. F of x is equal to, I'm just going to do a regular, a is equal to 1, x squared plus 2x minus or plus 8. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and use completing the square. Ramey, do you have a question or you just left your hand up? Okay, thank you. The reason I asked you to put it back down is because it messes up the alphabetical order. And if you don't have a question, just take it off. I appreciate it, because that way when I do the attendance, everybody will be in alphabetical order. It took me a while to figure that out. I couldn't figure out why everything was messed up. And then I saw the hands. The hands, when you raise your hand, it puts you at the top of the enrollment. So I guess I can see it better. I suck. All right, so x squared plus 2x plus 8 is equal to 0. And x squared, since a is equal to 1, I'm good. X squared plus 2x plus blank is equal to negative 8 plus blank. What's half of 2? 1. Thanks, class. 1 squared is 1. So I have x plus 1, quantity squared, is equal to negative 7. Now, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to draw my vertex. My vertex is negative 1, comma, negative 7. There's my vertex. I got to do my, yes, ma'am, Miss Ellis.
Oh, sorry. I'm just letting you know that I've got to dip out for the appointment, but I'll come back and watch later.
Okay, see you later.
All right.
Okay, here I'm going to write in f of x so I can keep the homework happy and the test happy. So f of x is equal to x plus 1 quantity squared plus 7. And here, if I want to find my vertex, I do the opposite, just like in chapter 2. The opposite, horizontal shift is opposite, and bring this down. So that is the same as that. Okay, and now I'm going to solve. Now this is where it gets different. X plus 1 quantity squared is equal to negative 7. And what happens when I take the square root of both sides? Somebody tell me what happens. Somebody tell me what happens. That means I want you to talk or, say something or. Okay, nobody knows. You can't take the square root of a what?
A negative number.
Okay, what does that tell us about x-intercepts? When you have the square root of a negative, that tells us, and I'm going to put this in pink, no x-intercepts. That's what it tells us. Now, before, what was called the radicand, which is under the radical, is now called the discriminant because it tells us something else. The discriminant tells us if it's negative, you have no x-intercepts or no solutions. If it's positive, you have two x-intercepts or two solutions. And if it's 0, you have one x-intercept or one solution. And that is what that is called. Whatever's under the radical used to be called the radicand. Now it's called the discriminant when you're doing this. Because when it's the discriminant, it tells you whether you have no x-intercepts, two x-intercepts, or one x-intercept. Most of the time, it's going to be two x-intercepts, most of the time. This one, I have to show you what to do because the calculator or the homework or the test does not want you to put no x-intercepts. Now, that's what I like because I'm getting you to sketch the graph because I want you to say no x-intercepts, but that's me as a teacher. Most of your homework questions and most of your test questions want you to write this in terms of I. And what is I? I is equal to the square root of -1, and I squared is equal to -1. So you need to write that down. Is that the first time you've seen it? No. You should have seen this in 101 and 102, at least 102. Okay, and I'll say it again. I is equal to the square root of -1. I squared is equal to -1. So you just write it in terms of I. So I'm going to break it up. Square root of 7, square root of -1. And I just told you the square root of -1 is I. And the square root of 7 is the square root of 7. X plus 1 is equal to, and then I'm going to change this 1, bring it over here. So X is equal to I times the square root of 7 minus 1. Which means you have no x-intercepts. And you've got a y-intercept of +8. And you've got a vertex of -1 and 7. So you should be able to graph this function. And we're going to graph it on, sketch it on the next page. But the main thing you need to realize here, if you have a negative in the radical, then that means you have to do this and write it in terms of I. Now that's what I was waiting on, Miss Davis, to do this problem, because some of your homework problems are going to ask you to write it in terms of I, and I hadn't got to that yet, so that's why I was waiting. So chances are I'll probably give y'all homework today. So anyway, now I'm also going to give you all the Chapter 3 homework. Now, why? Because I want you to tell me how much you know about Chapter 3. And because I don't want to keep going over the same thing over and over, I'm going to keep going with completing the square, because completing the square is the goal of Chapter 3. Okay, even if you look at your outline, when I wrote your outline, I put completing the square, completing the square, completing the square, because it's very important. So I'm going to depend a lot on your Chapter 3 questions to go over material that I put secondary to completing the square. So you're gonna probably see some homework questions, and you're gonna say, Hubert, we haven't went over this. Send me the question, and I'll go over it, because my priority in chapter 3 is completing the square. So I'm still on like 5. I still got 5 more examples to go. But anyway, let's go ahead and sketch this one. So there's my graph. I know I got a y-intercept, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I've got -1, +7, and it's opening upward, and it's floating because I don't have any x-intercepts. So my domain is all real numbers. My range is from -8 to infinity. My decreasing is from -infinity to -1. I'm sorry, that's +8. And increasing from -1 to infinity. And my line of symmetry is always going through the vertex. And that's going to be x is equal to 1 on the line of symmetry, -1, sorry, -1 on the line of symmetry. And as you can tell, the -7 tells me that it's floating. I can't even spell floating. It's out there, it's not touching the x-axis. Now you got to be careful, because sometimes you might have this. Sometimes you might have -2 x minus 4 quantity squared is equal to -7 or -8. Okay, now if you have something like this, you can't say, because what happens when you divide by -2? What does that turn into? Turns into a positive. So you can't just say, oh, well, there's a -8 over there. That -8 means no x-intercept. No. The -8, you have to ascertain the radical after you have got a is equal to 1 here. Okay, because if there's a negative out here, the net negative is going to turn that negative to a positive. So when you get to this point, when you take the square root of both sides, that's when you find the discriminant. When you take the square root of both sides, that's when you are finding the discriminant. But right here, if you was to do, and then you get x minus 4 quantity squared is equal to 4, then take the square root, then your negative that you had is now telling you that you have 2 x-intercepts instead of no x-intercept. So you got to be careful. If there's a negative out front, be careful. And we hadn't got to this yet. We'll get to that eventually. So let's do another one. I want you to do this one. I'm trying to hurry because I know some of you are going to start spontaneously combusting. So let's do f of x is equal to x squared. I'm going to give you a fairly easy one. Minus 4x plus, let's see, give you one that's 16. All right, now I want you to do that one. I want you to do everything. I want you to find the vertex. You know the y-intercept is 16. Find the vertex, find the, radical or whatever the discriminant, and domain, range, increasing, decreasing, line of symmetry, everything. Sketch it. I'll give you a couple of minutes. And of course, if you can't do it in a couple of minutes, that means you're probably a failure. Okay, so what do we have? Well, we know that the y-intercept is 16. That's pretty simple. So let's go ahead and set equal to 0. X squared minus 4x plus blank is equal to negative 16 plus blank. I went ahead and set it equal to 0 and moved the thing over. I went ahead and did that. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. X minus 2, quantity squared, is equal to negative 12. And at this point, our vertex is 2, 12. F of x is equal to x minus 2, quantity squared, plus 12. Vertex is opposite of negative 2 is 2, and bring the 12 down. And now we're going to solve. So x minus 2 quantity squared is equal to negative 12. This is 1. That's positive 1. So I'm ready to take the square root. There's not a negative out front. There's not a negative 1/2, a negative 5, a negative 2, in which you will see later after we do some more problems. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. That's when you take your handy dandy highlighter out and you say, buzzer goes off saying no x-intercepts because your discriminant is a negative. And the question will ask that. They'll say, what is the discriminant? Discriminant is negative, therefore no solution or no x-intercepts. Okay, and a question on a standardized test will just give you, they'll say square root of negative 42, and they'll say, what is the discriminant? And you say negative 42 is the discriminant. Negative 12 is the discriminant. It tells us we have no x-intercepts in Hubert's class, but in any other class, that means no solutions. It's going to be an I. It's going to write in terms of I. So x minus 2 is equal to the square root of 12 times the square root of negative 1, which is I. And x minus 2 is equal to the square root of 12i, and I just turn it around so you won't mistake the I being under the radical. You don't have to do that. You can put a little tag right there, and you don't have to put the I in front if you don't want to. X is equal to I times the square root of 12 plus 2. So we've got a parabola. Basically, we have a 16, which is up here, and we've got a 2 and a 12, which is right here. And we've got a parabola that looks like that. Our domain is all real numbers. Range is negative 12 to infinity. Decreasing from negative infinity to negative or positive 2, increasing from positive 2 to infinity. Line of symmetry always goes through the vertex, and that's x is equal to 2 for the line of symmetry. Now, like I said, this is a level 5, and the only difference between this and a level 2 or level 1, the first ones we did, the only difference is that the answer contains a negative, and that means no x-intercept. Okay, so as far as completing the square, the level hasn't changed from 1 and 2. It's still the same completing the square, but there's a little twist added to it. That's what makes it a level 5, because you have to do this. Okay, that's why it's a level 5, because of these 3 steps right here. Well, 4 steps if you count all of them. Okay. Now that you have complex numbers, that's what a complex number is. This right here is a complex number. This right here is complex sentence. Okay, complex number, complex sentence. Okay. Now we'll get into solving a little bit of those, but not much. They just want you to know it for completing the square. It's probably going to be your first section of homework. Okay, so now I'm going to shut off the presentation and shut down the recording.